Good morning, everybody. It's Friday, August 9th, and this is the AgYield War Room. I'm Dan Dempsey, and I'll be moderating today's session. As always, if you've got any questions or comments, please feel free to drop us a line in the chat area, and I'll be sure to get to it during the show. Overnight markets here, December corn up 1.50 at 398.5. November soybeans were up 5 at 1013.25, and December Chicago wheat was up 11.5 at 573. This morning, the USDA announced export sales of 132,000 soybeans to China for 24, 100,000 meal to Colombia, 12,000 of that for 23, and the balance for 24. And the last sale announced here this morning, 212,000 beans to unknown destinations, with 50,000 for 23 and 162,000 for 24. Good morning, guys. We're going to wrap up the week here. Justin, maybe just a few overriding comments. I know we got the USDA report Monday morning, which is interesting to start the week with the USDA report. But yeah, just maybe a few thoughts as we head in the weekend, and we'll throw it around the room.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Obviously, we're got the report on Monday. Big fund shorts in all of our grains, making new lows. So we ran into a spot where we're starting to see some good demand. We're competitive in the world export market for corn. Obviously, we're showing that we're competitive for beans, which we are way behind. So we need to see that on these breaks. Going into a USDA report, a lot of times can be a turning point in any market. I'm not saying that that's the case here, but a lot of times, something is enough to change the course of the market. So whether it's acres or yields aren't as big as everyone's hoping for, that's really short. Maybe that is enough just to cause some kind of short covering rally, and just the risk reward isn't as favorable. So for a lot of reasons, those are kind of things that happen. I still think we're going to be battling just hedge pressure in general. We do have big crops. Can they get a little smaller here or bigger? It's going to depend on August. I still think we're really early for just writing down a 185 corn yield and a 53 bean yield, and just looking at the carryouts. So the weather's got to finish really good. If it finishes really, really good, I think corn could be those kind of high numbers, and so could beans. But we were talking about this yesterday. August is the month for beans. So we're getting into where it's really, really important the next, 4-6 weeks of weather to how this bean crop finishes out. So, it can, in my opinion, can be still kind of anything. So the bean market, especially, I could be cautious here on, we're trying to press it below $10, running into business, big fund short. That one could be kind of dicey here if the weather doesn't play out perfect.
Yeah, and we, looking at like the next 10 to 12 days, I mean, it's not particularly a lot of precipitation across the belt. There's spotty showers in areas, but, it's not as consistent as it was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's just, our farm, Western Illinois, we're been irrigating for a week plus. So crops look great, but it's been dry. It's supposed to continue to be dry, cool, which is great for corn. But still dry. So that's kind of why my concern is more so on beans than corn. And it's not a high threat level at this point by any means. But you can, those big years, like 2016, I remember very well. It just rained every week all the way through August into early September. Pods filled out great. That bean size is the math of the bean size is more important than the pod count in a lot of ways. So those August rains are really important to make those massive crops.
Ben, anything you want to add to wrap up the week here for us?
Yeah, I think it's, you look at, we've priced in some pretty big crops already. It's very encouraging to see some bean demand finally show up. Mentioned the other day the big size and the $10 puts. And amazingly, we get down here and we start seeing some significant business. So it makes you wonder if that's not kind of part of the Chinese plan, is saying this is a level that we're willing to step in. Sometimes we see these purchases and it doesn't directly get translated into positive price for a little while. But if we keep seeing these types of sales at some point with the prices that we're at, it should start to be supportive. And if, depending on how the U.S. finishes, there certainly is from here, I would think, the possibility for some price appreciation in beans if a lot of things come together. We are in the Goldman roll. We were talking about this before the open, and that's an index fund. And while the SEP is not as heavily traded as some of the other contracts, they're having to sell their longs and replace it with December or March, wherever they go to. And maybe we've backed up these markets a little bit to a place where people who are willing to have ownership into first notice day are willing to step in. So again, you can't make much out of. It's easy to talk about all the things that can go right for price supportive. The fact is, we still have had, yesterday we had a new low in beans. We tapped our previous low in corn overnight. So just being respectful that price action is still in charge, and take some humility into Monday for what we can do.
You brought up a thought in my head, Ben, when you were talking about, the $10 strike. So I remember 2009, I believe, the market was really bearish on beans, and we got down to $9, and China bought basically all the beans they could at $9, filled up the reserves. We kind of poo-pooed it, and I'm not saying at all that's what's happening here, but you think about $9, that was 15 years ago. Just to kind of put into perspective what $10 beans are today. As bearish as the fundamentals look and some of those things, we are at a price that's really only 10% higher or so than it was 15 years ago when the Chinese were willing to load up. Now they've already bought a lot of Brazilian. There's a lot of supply from Brazil. They bought a ton there. They're really short bought here, but there are some price points that, to your point, these big guys will be willing to step in and fill up some extra reserves. So not saying that's happening at $10, but kind of made me think of that, kind of flashback of remembering that year where, that started happening at that, $9 level. So,
well, I will say, and I'm kind of just in general, I'm a little bit neutral here because of the time of the year. I don't know that I would want to be heavily short anything, and I don't know that I'd want to be really long anything. Maybe some little bit of bean protection just because it's August, but you look at where we're at, to your point, that $10 beans today, I don't know how we adjust, what is that inflation adjusted number? And if, even on small adjustments, grains are pretty cheap relative to a lot of other things right now. And we're seeing, you see a lot of the early stages of some of the talking heads giving us things that remind me of COVID when everyone was talking about 280 corn, right? 350, 340 corn, 920 beans. I'm not saying we're not going there because we certainly have today a pretty good crop in front of us, but it starts to feel like people are trying to talk this down for the next leg at some prices that maybe a few months ago did not seem plausible.
I think it's interesting too. I'm not saying that this is dictating their behavior, but I mean, we got 90 days until a new administration, right? A fresh administration in any capacity. You got to believe like every other country's got to be watching this pretty close, aren't they?
Well, yeah, and I think that this trade started getting really aggressive when it looked like Donald Trump was going to be our next president, and people have fear of a trade war. So markets don't take the day off for anyone. So and this is an apolitical statement, but if it looks like it's going to go against him, and all of a sudden maybe we have some dry finishing weather and some big business, we could put a short against the wall in the beans pretty quick.
Yeah, well, very good. Rylan, we got a couple minutes here before we open. Why don't we wrap up livestock for the week?
Yeah, I think most people wish we probably weren't even going to be open today for the most part, just because it's been a rough ride. But yeah, I mean, even with the discount on the board, it seems like that we're seeing this roll go on right now. It's still pretty active. It looks like right now, but we only really saw open interest come down 197 contracts in the live cattle, and it looked like open interest was actually up in the feeders. So it does look like we got some new sellers in the feeder market. Maybe a little bit of panic going on too, just because you've had pretty much 6 days straight down in a row, and that liquidation kind of started. So it just came, I think, a lot snowballed here. And we are seeing the futures kind of lead cash lower. Cash trade has been kind of all over the map so far. You've had some 185, 187 in Kansas, 185, 186 in Texas, and dress sales like right around like 306, low side 303. So Packers are definitely taking advantage of this move on the board. So overall, it looks like we're probably going to run into some support here, just from a fundamental standpoint. But I think the big concern right now is in the beef, just because we keep on seeing choice slip. We feel like we've seasonally topped, and it seems like that's going to be kind of the focus next week. So I think everybody wants to see what commitment of traders looks like, just to see if we really saw as much liquidation as we felt like we saw, and if there's still a ton of risk here on the table from the funds just still getting out here. So overall, we'll kind of wait and see what happens, but generally speaking, it's been kind of a rough ride. We'd hope we find some kind of recovery bounce in here at some point, but all eyes are going to be on commitment of traders and the balance of cash going into Monday.
All right, very good. Well, we'll take a look and start fresh next week. It is Friday, which brings us to our most exciting time of the week. It is Brian's Fun Fact Friday.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Happy Friday, everybody. I'm not sure how I could follow up last week's Phil and Ryan with butt load as a unit of measure, but I'll try. I'm just going to go the high road here and go to the Olympics here, since we are going into the closing weekend. USA clearly in the lead in the medal count, neck and neck right now at 30 each with the gold against China. So hopefully we can finish strong this weekend. Speaking of gold medals, on this date in 1936 in Germany, Jesse Owens won his 4th gold medal of that Olympic. And speaking of medals, actually, I'm going to have Dan jump in here with his actually fun fact on the medal counts.
So we came across this earlier this week, but Michael Phelps, who obviously is the legend, the GOAT, has more gold medals than 162 countries.
Wow,
That's
the
insane.
human fish.
Yeah.
The human fish.
Amazing. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's an awesome stat there. So hopefully US can finish strong this weekend here. So now all eyes will shift to the 2028 games in LA. So there was a few events that are no longer in existence that might hopefully show their face here in LA this in 4 years. One was the tug of war. Rylan, I thought this would be good for you. Plunge for distance.
Wow. Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, right. And I think these two will actually fit pretty well in LA, possibly.
You would do throwing for distance?
These might fit very well in LA. These last two: dueling pistols and live pigeon shooting. So,
wow.
yeah. So we'll see if those rear their head up here in LA for 28 season.
Oh, very good.
That's great, man.
Yeah, go US.
Go US.
Thanks, Bri. Dueling pistols. That's a good one. Very good. No, we've got, if you like the show as much as we do, we enjoy doing it. We appreciate everybody tuning in on a daily basis. We're having a lot of fun with it. Throw us a like and subscribe. It'll get you access to premium content, keep you up to speed on everything that's going on with AgYield. So just doesn't cost you anything. Throw us a like or subscribe, and we certainly appreciate that. Every day that the markets are open, we're streaming live on X, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, 8:15 Central Time. Hope everybody has a great weekend, and we look forward to talking to you again on Monday.
Thanks, Dan.